Netflix didn't just adapt The Witcher, they broke it. And I'm not talking about bad CGI or weird costume choices. I'm talking about the core of what made Geralt of Rivia a cultural icon. They took Andrzej Sapkowski's deep, quiet, philosophical restraint and replaced it with cheap Hollywood tropes. They turned the most thoughtful monster hunter in fantasy into a grunting action figure. And the worst part? Most of you watched the Kaer Morhen massacre and thought, that was cool, without realizing how much it destroyed everything the book stood for. Today we're digging into the script failures that gutted this franchise. We're talking about the choices that didn't just change the story. They broke the entire internal logic of the continent. And I'm going to show you exactly what Netflix stole from you when they decided to dumb down one of the greatest fantasy series ever written. Part 1, The Death of Philosophical Restraint. Let's start with the biggest loss. The Witcher was never about good versus evil. That's the whole point. Sapkowski built his entire world on the idea of the lesser evil. There are no heroes. There are no villains. Just people making impossible choices in a broken world. Geralt doesn't kill monsters because he's a hero. He kills them because it's his job, and he hates every second of it. He's seen too much to believe in black and white. That's why he's so quiet. That's why he thinks before he speaks. Every line he says has weight because he spent years thinking about it. But Netflix threw all that out the window. They turned every conflict into a clear good guy versus bad guy fight. They replaced slow, tense dialogue with endless sword fights. And the worst crime? They cut almost all of Geralt's internal monologues. Those monologues weren't just filler. They were the heart of the books. They let us see the man behind the mask, the philosopher who speaks 7 languages, who reads poetry, who hates the world because he knows exactly how cruel it can be. Without them, Geralt is just a guy with a sword who grunts a lot. He's not a legend. He's just another action hero. And here's the thing no one talks about. That philosophical restraint is what made the stakes feel real. When Geralt has to choose between 2 bad options, you feel his pain. When Netflix gives us a clear villain to kill, there's no tension. There's no thought. There's just noise. Part 2, the Kaer Morhen massacre that broke everything. Now let's talk about the single worst decision in the entire show. The Kaer Morhen massacre. If you've only watched the show, you probably thought this was a cool action scene. But if you've read the books, you know this is unforgivable. Kaer Morhen is not a fortress. It's a sanctuary. It's the only home the witches have left. And more importantly, witches are almost extinct. There are less than 20 of them left in the entire world. That's the whole point. They're a dying breed. Every single one of them matters. But Netflix decided to kill half of them in one episode. For a cheap action scene, they turned a place of quiet brotherhood into a bloodbath. And they didn't even think about the consequences. Let me break down the butterfly effect here. If half the remaining witches die in one attack, then the entire species is doomed. There's no way around it. They can't make more witches. The trials are lost, so every death is permanent. Every death brings them one step closer to extinction. But Netflix doesn't care. They just wanted a big fight scene. They wanted to raise the stakes. But they didn't realize that by killing all those witches, they destroyed the real stakes. The real stakes were always the slow, quiet death of an entire people. Not a single big battle. And it gets worse. The witches in the books are the best fighters in the world. They've spent their entire lives training. But Netflix did it anyway, because cool fights matter more than logic. Part 3, the collapse of narrative, stakes, and logic. But the Kaer Morhen massacre is just the tip of the iceberg. Netflix has spent 3 seasons breaking every single rule of the world that Sapkowski built. They ignore established lore whenever it's convenient for the plot. Want an example? In the books, magic has rules. It's dangerous. It takes years to learn. You can't just wave your hand and blow up a castle. But in the show, Yennefer can destroy an entire army with one spell. She can teleport across the continent whenever she wants. There are no limits. There are no consequences. And don't even get me started on the political intrigue. The books have some of the best political writing in fantasy. Every character has complex motivations. Every decision has ripple effects. But Netflix turned all the villains into generic bad guys who want to take over the world for no reason. They stripped away all the nuance. They made everything simple. Because simple is easier for a global audience. But simple is boring. And simple breaks the world. Because when there are no rules, nothing matters. If Yennefer can do anything, then why does anyone need Geralt? If the villains are just evil for evil's sake, then why should we care? When nothing has consequences, the stakes disappear. The entire story becomes meaningless. It's almost like the showrunners didn't even read the books. Or worse, they read them and decided that the audience was too stupid to understand the complex parts. So they dumbed it down. And in doing so, They destroyed everything that made The Witcher special. Part 4, The Hallowing of Geralt of Rivia. But the biggest victim of all is Geralt himself. Netflix has completely gutted his character. They turned one of the most complex characters in fantasy into a one-dimensional brute. In the books, Geralt is a philosopher. He's a thinker. He's cynical, he's dry, he's funny. He has a sharp wit that cuts through all the bullshit. He hates the world, but he still cares. He still tries to do the right thing, even when he knows it won't make a difference. But in the show, he's just a guy who grunts and fights. He barely speaks. He has no opinions. He has no thoughts. He's just a passive participant in his own story. Things happen to him, and he reacts. That's it. They took away his intelligence. They took away his wit. They took away his pain. And in doing so, they took away his humanity. The Geralt in the books is relatable because he's broken. He's tired. He's seen too much, but he still keeps going. The Geralt in the show is not relatable. He's a superhero. He never loses. He never struggles. He just shows up, kills the bad guy, and leaves. There's no depth. There's no soul. And that's the saddest part of all. Henry Cavill loved this character. He fought to play him. He tried to stay true to the books, but the writers wouldn't let him. They forced him to play a dumbed-down version of Geralt, and that's why he left. Because even he couldn't stand what they were doing to the character he loved. Part 5, What This Means for the Future of Fantasy. So what's the lesson here? The Witcher isn't just a failed adaptation. It's a warning sign for the entire fantasy genre. Netflix and other streaming services are taking beloved books and stripping them down to their most basic parts. They're removing all the depth, all the nuance, all the things that make them unique. They're turning them into generic action movies that anyone can watch and forget. They call it streamlining for a global audience. But it's not streamlining. It's dumbing down. It's assuming that the audience is too stupid to handle complex themes. And it's killing the genre. Faithful adaptations don't just make money. Look at Game of Thrones, the early seasons. Look at Lord of the Rings. People still watch them, still talk about them, still love them, because they respected the source material. They kept the depth. They kept the nuance. But the Netflix model, it's all about quick views and viral moments. It's about making something that looks good in a 10-second TikTok clip. It doesn't matter if the story makes sense. It doesn't matter if the characters are well written. All that matters is the spectacle. And that's a tragedy, because fantasy is more than just swords and dragons. It's about us. It's about the human condition. It's about the choices we make when the world is against us. And when you take that away, you're left with nothing but empty noise. There is a better way. Future adaptations need to balance visual scale with thematic depth. They need to trust the audience. They need to respect the source material. Because if they don't, we're just going to keep getting more generic, forgettable garbage. And the greatest fantasy stories ever written will never get the adaptations they deserve. At the end of the day, The Witcher deserved better. Geralt deserved better. And we deserve better. We deserved an adaptation that respected our intelligence. That respected the source material. That gave us the complex, thoughtful story we fell in love with. Instead, we got a cheap Hollywood knockoff. A show that looks good on the surface but has nothing underneath. A show that forgot what made The Witcher special in the first place. So tell me in the comments, what did you hate most about Netflix's Witcher? Did you notice these logical holes when you first watched? And what fantasy book do you hope gets a faithful adaptation next? Let's talk about it. And if you like this deep dive, hit subscribe for more breakdowns of how Hollywood ruins our favorite stories. I'll see you in the next one.